Once you introduce it, it's over, and you no longer have a choice. And that is my message and awareness I try to bring to you tonight and people all over the world. And again, my wife is 78 and I'm 78, and we don't know how many good years we have left, but believe me, the good years we got left yet, we're going to go down fighting for the rights of farmers, for always to have the right to use their food or their seeds and plants from year to year. Thank you for listening to me this evening. I'm very sorry I did not introduce my wife. I should ask her to stand. I
apologize. Percy and Louise, you're amazing people. I bet Monsanto has really regretted ever taking you on. All right, I think we definitely have time for questions, and I'd like to ask Lucy to come up too in case there's questions for Lucy or Percy. So, yes, shall we start with you?
Well, Percy's done a lot of travel. I want to know where the media and the press are they ignoring this whole thing? Where's the press?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Where's the press in it all? The press.
Media. Why is the media or the press not covering it better?
I think it's all about money. It's because if you take the Western Producer, which is supposed to be a farm paper based in Saskatoon, just look at the ads in that paper. It's either chemicals, fertilizer, farm equipment. Monsanto many times, I'll give an example, Monsanto many times has a double-page advertisement. That's $18,000. It's their bread and butter. Many times I've been talking with people from the Star Phoenix in Saskatoon. I said, do you really represent the farmers? And they said, well, we have to try and keep a balance. Pardon? The Western Producer, yeah. I said the Star Phoenix.
Is there any press in the room here now, or the media?
Yeah, there's one hand there. Thanks for coming.
We're going to see this paper. We're going to see your response.
But
We're going to see anything.
I should say that in Europe, I find that the people are really knowledgeable about GMOs because the press do cover it there. And that's what I find such a big difference here. I should give you an example. One of the scientists that testified against me on Monsanto's behalf was from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency in Saskatoon, a person by the name of Keith Downey. And he was asked by the Star Phoenix of Saskatoon, where are you getting your information? What research have you been doing to make those statements in court? And you know what his answer, and he was paid $30,000 by Monsanto. He said, I get all my information from Monsanto. And he works for Canadian Food Inspection Agency.
Russ?
Yeah, Lucy, you mentioned, both of you talked about 4 GMO crops in Canada. What about the U.S.?
Yep.
Yeah, it is really surprising that it's actually this small amount of crops that are grown, genetically modified crops that are grown in Canada, corn, canola, soy, and sugar beet. But of course, as Percy has mentioned, for a long time, cotton was the 4th that we were eating. So the list of corn, canola, soy, and sugar beet are the crops, GM crops grown in Canada. But in the US, GM cotton is grown, and we eat cottonseed. Of course, actually, GM cotton is also now grown in India as well, and a few other places. But the other GM crops that we might find incorporated into our food somehow, there is a genetically modified papaya that's grown in Hawaii. And so it's probably in some of the papaya juices or what have you. And there is actually a small amount of squash, yellow crookneck squash, that is it's commercialized genetically modified squash in the U.S. And if you look it up, I forget the name of the seed company, but there's quite a variety of these squash on the market. And actually, by accident, one of them is called Terminator, although it's not it's not Terminator technology because that's not commercialized yet. And the eighth or last GM food that we would find possibly in Canada via the United States is milk products from cows that are injected with the veterinary drug that's genetically engineered bovine growth hormone. But that actually speaks to a really important, inspiring victory that we need to remember as we move forward to continue the fight, is that in Canada, through the efforts of farmers and consumers, all of us here in this room, we managed to stop bovine growth hormone. And that did take 10 years and a lot of effort. No one knew how that was going to end, but we managed to stop bovine growth hormone. And in the States, it was approved. But they've actually defeated bovine growth hormone largely in the States. Even just recently, more and more companies are rejecting bovine growth hormone or milk from bovine growth hormone, and Monsanto recently sold that part of their business actually. So, even though there's these very, large crops on the market, there's still, some major victories that we've won, and it's not a big list of GM crops that we're eating. It just happens that they're ingredients that are incorporated into a lot of foods.
Some of the main other food crops that are fully developed as GMOs is rice, wheat, alfalfa, which they've been trying to introduce, and now flax, but you might think, well, rice is not too important to us, but believe me, to Manitoba and Saskatchewan, especially Saskatchewan, we're very concerned about the rice because of all the wild rice in the north. So we're really fighting no introduction of rice, also GMO rice.
Okay, I've got one here, and then two, and then three lined up. So go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering, do you know how many GMO crops have been developed altogether?
Yeah, there's no way. The question was how many GM crops have been developed together, and there's no really way for us to know, because even as Percy had said, at the University of Saskatchewan, this flax was developed. I mean, we knew that happened, but in India they're experimenting with eggplant, and at any time, any type of researcher could be experimenting with a vegetable or what have you. So this speaks to the danger of this type of experimentation, especially if it's happening without a mandate from farmers, which was the case with flax. But this is actually an important question because it relates to the question before, because we often think that there's lots of GM crops out there and all the food we're eating is GM, and it's just not the case. It's just that there's always news about new experiments and great new genetically modified rice, but farmers in Asia are fighting genetically modified rice really, really hard. Same with India, they're fighting genetically modified eggplant. So, all across the world, other farmers and consumers are fighting to stop these crops and foods, yeah.